In the quiet glow of a North Hollywood gym, where the sound of clanging weights echoes off mirrors and the scent of chalk hangs in the air, the story of a man who still stands, if not quite on a stage, then still proud in the shadows of bodybuilding history, comes alive. Albert Beckles, the legendary Barbadian-born Iron Warrior often known as Al Peak, has not died, and there is no official cause of death to report, because as of 2026 he remains very much alive, still carrying the quiet, low-key presence of a living legend who once stalked the posing dais with a physique that defied his age and his background. Born July 14, 1930, in Bridgetown, Barbados, Beckles turned 95 in 2025, an age that would be extraordinary for anyone, but for a man who spent decades on the stage, injured his back, survived major surgery, and still maintained a serious training routine, it feels almost like a miracle carved out of sweat and discipline. Rumors and mixed UPS around his name appear online. Some obituaries for Barbadian Beckles relatives, older, misreported birth years, even an unrelated death notice in the family tree. But the man himself, the bodybuilder Albert Beckles, is still with us, a quiet legend who never sought tabloid headlines, just a good workout, a tight pose, and the quiet respect of those who know his name. To tell his story, we have to start in the concrete courtyard of Bridgetown, where a young Albert grew up not in a privileged home, but in a working-class Bajan household, where chores and hard labor were part of daily life. His father worked with horses, and as a boy, Albert had to run ahead of the carriage, leading the horse through the streets, an early kind of cardiovascular training that would later echo in his endurance and work ethic. He started working young, first in a hotel kitchen, then as a professional chef, and even though he later moved to the United Kingdom and eventually settled in the United States, that early life in Barbados stayed with him as a sort of grounding, a reminder of where he came from before he ever stepped into the spotlight as a bodybuilder. His first real exposure to the world of iron came when he picked up a barbell almost by accident, inspired by a local gym in Barbados, and from that moment on, he was hooked. The feeling of iron in his hands, the way his body began to reshape, the way clothing that once felt loose suddenly clung to muscle. This was the moment that began his 60-year journey in the sport, a journey that would take him from the Caribbean islands to the bright lights of the IFBB stage. In the 1960s, bodybuilding in the United States was still a small, cultish world, more about gentlemen posing in swimsuits than the global spectacle it is today, but it was also a time when the sport was hungry for stars, for men with charisma as much as physiques. Albert Beckles slipped into that era with a quiet intensity. He was never the loudest, flashiest, or most media-savvy competitor, but he had a look that turned heads. His nickname, Al Peak, came from his famously thick, bell-like biceps, which when fully flexed created a towering peak that became one of his trademarks. He began competing in the UK, then moved to the United States, where he quickly found his niche in the classic bodybuilding circuit, winning important titles that laid the foundation for his later reputation. He won the 1971 AAU Mr. America, a title that, at the time, was one of the most respected in the sport, and that win, coupled with his growing presence at major shows, cemented his status as a man who could bring serious muscle to the stage. What set Albert apart, though, was his longevity and his discipline. He competed in multiple decades, from the 1960s to the 1990s, and made 13 appearances at the Mr. Olympia, bodybuilding's most prestigious contest, even in an era when the stage became taller, softer, and more dramatic. He never won the Olympia, but in 1985 he finished in second place, a remarkable achievement at an age when most competitors had already packed up their posing trunks and retired. His 1985 showing, in particular, remains one of the most talked about runs in bodybuilding history, a testament to the power of training smart, eating clean, and staying committed to the sport even as older lifts, older joints, and the scars of past injuries conspired against him. That year he became known as the Perpetual Mr. Olympia, a nickname coined by writer and trainer Charles Poliquin, because no matter how old he got or how many years passed, Albert just kept coming back, refusing to fade away quietly like so many others before him. His personal life has always been more private, less documented in the headlines, and there is no widely known wife or public romantic partner associated with his name. Instead, his narrative online and in bodybuilding circles focuses on his training, his competitions, and the deep respect he earned from peers and fans. Public records and family notices in Barbados list other members of the Beckles family, such as Ina Lillian Beckles, a relative who passed away in 2018, but these notices do not tie back to the bodybuilder himself in any direct, publicly documented way, suggesting that his own family life, if he has children or close kin, remains largely out of the spotlight. Albert has spoken over the years about his roots in Barbados, about his siblings and family there, but he has never used his personal life as a marketing tool, never tried to sell his story as a family saga, preferring instead to let his physique and his work ethic speak for him. In terms of lifestyle, Albert Beckles became famous for pushing his body to extreme limits, even in his later years. He has described a diet that once hovered around 10,000 to 12,000 calories per day, fueled by massive amounts of protein, rice, tuna, and other staples, a level of intake that would be almost unimaginable to a normal athlete, but which was necessary for someone of his size and energy output when he was still in intense training. He trained religiously, multiple times per day, treating his body like a temple that demanded constant upkeep, not a prize you display once and then let go. Even after retiring from professional competition at the age of 62, he never fully left the gym, continuing to train, to teach, and to mentor younger bodybuilders, passing down the old-school philosophy of discipline, symmetry, and posing precision that he learned in the 1960s and 1970s. His net worth is not officially documented, but people close to the sport and those who have interviewed him in documentaries and features generally estimate his financial standing somewhere in the low to mid seven-figure range, accumulated over decades of show appearances, posing choreography work, promotional events, seminars, and limited brand work. He never became a household name like Schwarzenegger or Coleman, never cashed in on a mainstream endorsement empire, but his longevity in the industry, his ability to stay relevant through multiple eras, and his willingness to show up, teach, and mentor have kept him financially comfortable and, more importantly, respected. His residence, long associated with North Hollywood, California, reflects that lifestyle. A modest but tasteful home filled with photos, trophies, and old photos of him in his prime. A place where he can retreat, train, and enjoy the quiet life of a man who has earned every line on his body and every scar on his back. The most moving chapter in his life, for many fans, is his fight to keep his back and his body together. In the 1990s, after a lifetime of heavy lifting, Albert's lower back began to collapse, leading to surgeries that, according to his own interviews, almost ended his life. He has spoken openly about waking up in the hospital, certain he would never lift a barbell again, and then slowly, painfully rebuilding his strength, not to compete, but because he could not imagine living without training. That recovery, that refusal to accept a quiet, sedentary old age, has made him a hero in the eyes of many bodybuilders, because it represents the deeper truth of the sport. It is not about winning trophies. It is about the relationship between a man, his iron, and his willpower. Today, at 95, Albert Beckles no longer competes, and he rarely appears on the big international stages, but his presence in the bodybuilding world is still felt. Photographs of him in his 80s, posing alongside much younger competitors, show a man whose frame has softened with age, but has never surrendered completely, a man whose shoulders still square off, whose arms still swell, whose posing still carries the crispness of a lifetime of practice. Interviews with him, short videos, and fan tributes paint a picture of a quiet, humble man who never chased followers, never sought to be an influencer, and who still talks about the sport in the same way he did in the 1970s, as a way of life, not a performance for likes and views. If his story touches you, if the image of a man in his mid-90s, still moving with purpose, still talking about iron and discipline, still teaching others how to stand tall under the lights, makes you feel something deep in your chest, then please consider giving this video a like and sharing it with others who love the classic, raw side of bodybuilding. And if you want to stay connected to stories like this one, stories of living legends, forgotten heroes, and quiet giants, consider subscribing and turning on a notification bell so you never miss a new episode.